Hey, what's up, guys? Today I wanted to talk about how to gain an edge in the crypto market. As the industry matures, I believe that having an edge in the market would make it much easier to make money compared to competing with other investors that don't have that edge. If you guys are new here, my name is Richard. I'm a yield farmer and investor. I've been in crypto since 2021. And throughout that time, I've been able to build a multi-six-figure portfolio while not having a huge income. If you guys want to check out my portfolio, you can look at this portfolio update playlist here. A lot of the gains is thanks to yield farming. That's why this channel is about yield farming. So we'll go over how to gain an edge in the context of crypto investing and yield farming, a few mistakes I used to make, but you can also apply a lot of these concepts outside of yield farming. If you don't have an edge, it's very tough to make money in the market. So if you want to learn how I do it, then be sure to stick around and watch the video. And just a quick disclaimer, like always, this is not financial advice. Please do your own research before making any investment decisions. So the first concept that really helped me a lot is focus. And you might have heard of this before, but a lot of times people are not focused at all, right? The way I think about it is here, this is your energy. So if you guys are doing too many things at once, for example, you're farming airdrops, you're trying to day trade, you're trying to trade NFTs, you're trying to swing trade as well, and then maybe some yield farming, then you're also doing a side hustle, you're working a job, maybe you're going to college as well. This is what is going to happen, right? Your energy is spread out and you're going to make little to no progress. Versus if you only focus on 1 to 2 things, a lot of times focusing on one thing would yield the best result. So for example, this is what the chart would look like. You will have that energy to push past like the initial learning curve and to get to where you want to go. So I made this mistake as well when I was learning yield farming. I was trying to farm airdrops and then I was also trying to swing trade and then maybe learn some day trading strategies and see if I could make some extra income. But the reality is, if I just focus on one thing, I have much better results because I can make sure that I'm doing the proper things and to build the skills necessary to succeed, right? So if you guys want to learn yield farming, one of the best ways to do so is to just focus on it. And I'm not saying that you have to only stick to yield farming like your entire life, right? The longer you stick to it, the more time you spend on it, the better you'll get. And the better you are, that's where your edge comes in, right? Just because you've been in crypto for a very long time doesn't really make you a better investor, right? You actually need to focus on like learning about crypto, learning about yield farming, learning about investing in general. How do great investors think? Like Ray Dalio, Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, and a bunch of other investors or traders, right? So that's the first thing. Just by making this one simple shift actually gave me much better results. And the next thing that I want to show you guys is this formula. What we can think about it is something like this: time, multiply that by focus, and then if we multiply that by reflection as well, equals to results. So let's break this down here. So focus is what we just talked about, right? You need to be able to focus on a few things at a time. If you're spread too thin, you're not going to make progress and you're not going to be managing your portfolio properly either. If you guys are, for example, day trading and you're also running more active yield farming strategies, right? So that's the first thing, the focus. And the time, the reason why you need time is just learning something and gaining edge in the market takes time, right? This is why if you stick with one industry or a niche topic like yield farming, over time, you're going to become better and better at it versus hopping around and doing a bunch of other things, right? The more time you spend on it and the more focus that you put into the time that you spend, the better results you're going to have. But also you need to reflect on your past mistakes. What are the problems that you encounter? What are the solutions to the problem that you encounter, right? For yield farming, it could be stuff like impermanent loss, right? How do we take profits, compounding our gains, and stuff like risk management. So these are all like very important topics that you really need to think critically and reflect on your past mistakes as well. If you're losing money, Why are you losing money? If you lost money or if you made money, we always want to take the time to reflect on our past mistake so that we could actually know how we could improve, right? This is how I've been able to learn yield farming really fast. I've been yield farming since 2023, and some people started way earlier than me, right? Maybe in 2021 or earlier. But a lot of times when I track their portfolio, I have better results because I've actually spent the time to focus, reflect, and the actual time spent in like learning this thing, right? Again, it doesn't matter if you're in crypto for 10 years, but you never do any research, you never think critically, you never look into the different strategies of how to make money in the market, you never learn any new things, right? So it doesn't matter how much time you spend if you don't spend the time to focus and reflect. And the thing about getting good at something is you might have heard it takes about like 10,000 hours to become a master at something. And I find this to be pretty much true. So let me tell you guys a story. I sometimes work as a freelance artist. I currently do much less of that now because I'm trying to focus on yield farming and DeFi. But the way I got started was I put a ton of hours into learning art, at least like 6 to 7 hours a day. A few years back when we were all locked down, that's how I was able to progress really quickly. Even though I don't think I've even put like 10,000 hours into art, I've been able to progress really quickly because I actually spend the time into it, right? And I used to teach martial arts as well. Most people that improve really quickly, they spend a lot of time thinking about martial arts, spending the time to ask questions, and then spending the time to actually practice what they are learning. And if they stick with it over time, they're going to become really, really good, right? And how do we actually practice yield farming? The first is to study the materials. I try my best to give you guys the best information possible when it comes to yield farming. And a few people have been asking me for coaching and courses as well. So I'm starting to do that. I gave the early access to some people that reached out to me on X. So if you're interested in that, you could send me a message as well. But the thing is with yield farming, there's a large learning curve, right? So we really need to study like a bunch of different topics, like how to use technical analysis, how do we set our ranges, how do we deal with impermanent loss, how do we find good pools, how do we research tokens, and things like that, right? So studying is the first part, and you could do stuff like researching tokens. The more time you spend researching different like crypto assets, then you're going to get better at that as well. And because when you're yield farming, you typically want to pick good assets that you are comfortable holding. So this would also help with your yield farming journey. And then you want to learn how to look at charts as well, how to look for like reversal signals. The price tells us a story, right? We want to be able to determine if the price action is bullish, if it's bearish, what to do in each case. So looking at charts is also a good use of time. You could also be running simulations. I have a few videos on my channel talking about how to run simulations before you deploy into liquidity pools. So spending the time to actually use these tools would make you a better yield farmer. And spending time to think critically is also very important. There's a lot of misinformation in DeFi. For example, a lot of people simply do not yield farm concentrated liquidity pools because they believe that the impermanent loss risk is too great. But a lot of times, we're not even trying to outperform holding in the market, right? For example, if I'm pairing Ethereum to USDC, one of my goals could be to basically slowly sell Ethereum on the way up. So impermanent loss doesn't even matter in this case. And when I do that, I'm actually earning some passive income in the process rather than just staking my Ethereum for very low income, right? So that's why it's very important to think. Don't just take what I say at face value. You got to be able to think for yourself, see if this is true or not based on your past experiences and just common sense. And because sometimes it takes a long time to learn something, just take your time, right? Don't rush the process. It takes time to become good at something. It's a very complex topic. That's why a lot of people reach out to me for like coaching and guidance, right? If you're new to crypto, it's even harder But the bright side is if you stick with it, you will become an expert. You will become good at it as long as you apply all of those things that I talked about it earlier. And to actually get to that 10,000 hour mark, you need to enjoy the process and the journey. So this is you, right? And then this is your goal. We want to be good at yield farming or gain an edge in the market in whatever you want to do. If you want to be a swing trader, for example, you have to be able to stick with the goal because a lot of times what you're going to find is that your road is not going to be a straight line, right? You're going to run into some road bumps along the way. And depending on the quality of information that you got and your own skill sets as well, the road could be smoother like this, or it could be really wild like this as well, right? But if you don't give up, a lot of times you will still get there. Some people, because they enter into too much roadblocks along the way, they might just give up in the process, right? And then never get to this goal in the first place. So that's something to consider, especially if you guys are investing into altcoins. Sometimes your portfolio would fluctuate by quite a lot. It doesn't matter if you're down this month or the next month, but over your lifetime of investing, if you're profitable, building your wealth, outpacing inflation, that's all we really care about, right? It doesn't matter if you're underperforming or a little bit, as long as we still securing some profits and we're getting better in the process. So we can control the results to a certain point, right? But sometimes there are a lot of factors that are outside of our control. For example, the market. The crypto market is really small. There's a lot of like scams and manipulation in the market. So sometimes we can't control that. But what we can control is basically leveling up our skills to become better so that our road becomes smoother rather than bumpier like this chart, right? And I'm starting to see more and more crypto people on X that have large accounts getting into yield farming and DeFi. But in my opinion, you're still very early. I would argue that less than 50% of the people actually interacted with DeFi before, stuff like depositing into a liquidity pool or just staking and lending out their assets. A lot of times people just buy and hold, sometimes even in centralized exchanges. So in my opinion, you're still early in this trend. Maybe not as early as, let's say, like if you started a few years back, but you're still very early. I talked to a bunch of people. Sometimes people just interact a little bit with DeFi, but they're not really spending the time to study it because it's a very complex topic, right? Some people already have a lot of money and could benefit a lot from yield farming, but they don't want to spend that much time to basically learn it. That's why they don't learn it. In my opinion, it's not that hard to gain an edge in yield farming compared to different money-making strategies. Like, for example, trading is much more competitive because now you're competing against like a lot of full-time traders, a lot of hedge funds, and the liquidation risk is pretty high. And on top of that, these exchanges like Binance also sees your orders and stuff like that, right? So they know exactly where like the liquidation zones are. I don't know if there's manipulation or not, but it's very likely that you're not going to be able to beat these full-time traders or these hedge funds because that's who you are competing against. Comparing to yield farming, we're not really trying to like time the market too much. And a lot of times the people we are competing against are just retail traders. So for me, the success rate is much higher. And just to wrap it up, I think there are some mistakes to watch out for. The first mistake I've made is just trying to do too many things at once. I was freelancing art, right? I was also doing DeFi. And then I was also looking into different strategies like swing trading and day trading. But after really focusing on yield farming, that's when I made the most progress. So don't try to do too many things at once. A lot of times we can only develop like 1 to 2 skills at a time. And I'm not saying that you need to spend like, 1 whole year to study yield farming either, right? You could, for example, spend like a few weeks studying like yield farming, focusing on it, and then change to another topic that you're interested in as well, and then coming back to yield farming. But the point is, if you just stick to a few things at a time, the progress you're going to make is much greater than if you have your energy spread out. And this plays into altcoin investing as well. My portfolio right now is pretty altcoin heavy because I believe that the altcoin season is coming. That's what I'm positioned for. But a lot of times you can only be really good at a few areas of the altcoin investing, right? There are a bunch of different niches like real world asset, AI, DeFi, gaming, a bunch of potential areas that you could invest in. And there are specific ecosystem as well, like the Solana ecosystem, the base ecosystem. If you guys are trying to basically gain an edge in too many different markets, what is going to end up happening is you're not going to gain an edge in any market, right? Compared to some people I know, for example, they're deeply into hyperliquid, or they're deeply into base, or they're deeply into abstract or whatever layer 2 or Solana. They typically have a much better edge, especially if you guys are playing with mid to small cap altcoins. So don't go crazy and try to do everything. Try to invest into every other vertical. Warren Buffett talks about this as well, right? You have your circle of competence, and sometimes investment opportunities would basically fall into your circle of competence. That's where you have an edge and actually make money, right? We don't want to invest in things that we don't understand. For example, I used to work as a real estate analyst, but now that I don't really worry about that. I focus on crypto, and that's my area of competence. I focus on yield farming. That's what I'm good at, and that's what I have an edge in, which makes it much easier to make money in the market. And I think one of the biggest mistakes is just not reflecting on your mistakes, problems that you face. It's very important to reflect and adjust your strategies as you go. I'm still learning every single day, even though I've spent like thousands of hours studying yield farming. I'm still learning about DeFi all the time. There's a ton of materials to study and get into, and also a ton of reflecting that you can do based on your previous performance. If you lost money, why did you lose money, and what to do instead next time when you see a similar situation. So I hope that was helpful, guys. I talk about DeFi, investing, yield farming, crypto, all of that good stuff on my YouTube channel. So be sure to check that out. I try to give you the best information possible. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time.